Welcome back to The Verdict. Mick Cornett and Kent Myers with this week's show. And on this stage, we're going to have Senate Pro Tem Glenn Coffey.
President Pro Tem.
President Pro Tem.
Yeah, the first Republican President Pro Tem of the Oklahoma Senate ever.
Sounds impressive.
Well, it is impressive, and when you get to see Glenn again, he's been a relatively frequent visitor on this show. Our viewers will remember why he is selected and thought of so highly by his colleagues to be elected President Pro Tem. He was co-President Pro Tem when the Senate was divided 50-50 between Republicans and the Democrats, and then, of course, as we know, that changed in a recent election, and he is now holding that post by himself, and we want to talk to him about what kind of new responsibilities and obligations that has laid on his shoulders.
State Senator Glenn Coffey, today's guest on The Verdict, and we'll be right back.
Every day America uses clean-burning natural gas instead of coal or oil is a day of victory for our environment. That's why Chesapeake chose to explore for natural gas exclusively, and we've never looked back. Because natural gas burns twice as clean as oil or coal, and reducing carbon emissions to combat potential global warming is every bit as urgent as cutting our dependence on energy imports. As America's #1 driller of new gas wells, Chesapeake is moving fast to find untapped reserves of natural gas here at home. It's the right fuel for America's economy and the fuel for a clean air future. We just happen to be early to see it so clearly. Chesapeake, natural gas wins the day.
Wilsey, Meyer, Eatman, Tate. We're accountants. We do taxes, business valuations, estate planning, and consulting. And we're right here in Oklahoma, working with the owners of small and medium-sized businesses. Steve Wilsey and Stuart Meyer have the resources and the experience. Wilsey, Meyer, Eatman, Tate in Oklahoma City and Tulsa.
And welcome back to The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers, and Kent's going to introduce today's guest.
Today we're pleased to welcome back to The Verdict Senator Glenn Coffey, the Honorable Glenn Coffey, who has been with us before but not with his current title. His current title is President Pro Tempore of the Oklahoma Senate. He did his undergraduate work at Northeastern State University, where he was selected as the outstanding senior. He did his law work at the University of Oklahoma. He's been in the Senate about 10 years. Last session, he held the title Co-President Pro Tempore. Now the co has been deleted, and he is serving in the capacity by himself. His legislative accomplishments are many, too many to list, but we're awfully pleased he'd give us his time in the very middle of the session getting started. Glenn, welcome back.
Delighted to be here. Thank you both.
Welcome back to the show. Great to have you as always. All right, there's 48 senators. You have an advantage now with the Republican majority. Is it, I forget, is it 25-23, 26-22?
26-22.
26-22. So that's a 2-election swing from where you were and why you shared the title in the previous session. So how does it change? How does it, when you lose the co and you become the president of the Senate Pro Temp, what does that mean basically?
Well, it means that we have the responsibility of setting the agenda, of designating who the committee chairs are, and basically the process of how things are going to move forward.
How did it work in the shared? I mean, as far as the committees and all those things, did you all share the amount of committees that were chaired by each party?
You know, it was one of the most even-handed, fair processes I've ever been part of. It's something that I'll always be very proud of. And
It's a dangerous precedent that,
it is.
that you guys were setting.
But Senator Mike Morgan was a great partner. We truly, it was even down the middle, and we found a way to make it work, and I'm proud of those accomplishments. It's different now, though. I mean, you have a majority and you have a minority. The minority will be opposing a lot of our ideas, but I think that's part of what makes the process work well. Ideas need to stand up to opposition and be tested and be proven.
Well, I think the assessment, if you will, of the power sharing arrangement that you and Senator Morgan carried out this last session is just outstanding. I mean, the bipartisanship that each of you displayed is commendable, and I know it was difficult at times, but you guys acted civilly, even when you didn't probably agree. You disagreed agreeably. And I think the citizens caught on to that and are appreciative of that. Let me ask you this, just kind of outline for us the several major issues that you think the legislature will face this year. Some of them are apparent with the budget matters,
right.
but there are probably other things that our viewers would like to know is going to be on your desk and on the front pages.
Well, I think that's a great question. You're right. The budget is looming over all of us. It's going to be a significant shortfall. We're going to have, we just found out the final numbers and are going to have to adjust accordingly as far as what cuts need to be made, where are we going to be able to come up with the dollars, because we do have to have a balanced budget at the end of the day. Other important issues, we're going to continue to look at tax policy in a budget shortfall year. It's difficult to look at cutting income tax, but that's one that over the long haul I think will make a big difference that we've got to continue to look at. Education reform, there'll be a number of important issues, whether it's charter schools, deregulation of public schools. Those are important issues. Transportation, healthcare, pro-business issues. I suspect that we will have a discussion about tort reform this year, and what form that will take, it's still a little early to say, but those are some of the issues that will be prominent. The energy, talking about an energy policy for the state of Oklahoma, we have some unique assets, whether it's wind or other areas that we need to talk about how do we capitalize on. Those are all issues that will be on the forefront.
Well, without having you play all your cards, when a state government like Oklahoma is facing a shortfall of a previous year's revenue, what are the areas that you can cut, and what are the areas that you just really can't realistically cut?
Well, obviously essential services and things that are important and functions that have to go on are less likely to be cut. Certainly nobody wants to see dramatic cuts in public safety and education. Transportation, we finally made some great strides. We certainly don't want to go backwards in those areas. And so that leaves a much smaller area of government at which to cut from. And so whether you find new ways of doing things and still provide those services, or cuts across the board, all of those are things that have to be looked at. And if there's assets and cash accounts in different agencies, we'll be looking at all those things to do the best we can without huge cuts anywhere.
I think our viewers are generally aware that we have something in Oklahoma called a rainy day fund. I'm really not much more aware of anything in that regard except what I just said. But what I don't know is when do you make access into the rainy day fund? How bad does it have to be to constitute a rainy day?
Right. Well, we've seen in the past, we've used rainy day funds for cloud seeding activities, for any number of things. But the fact of the matter is...
To make it rain more.
To make it rain more, I guess. The fact of the matter is we've never had a higher dollar amount of the rainy day fund. It's approaching $800 million. The legislature can only spend half of that. I think it's $765 million, so half of that would be available to the legislature this year if the governor were to declare an emergency and the legislature were then to appropriate it. I think everybody is reticent to touch that. There have been some comments made in the press. President Boren, who, in a conversation I had with him, he said his comments weren't exactly accurately quoted. He wasn't calling for us to access it. But the governor, myself, and others expressed caution, because if this recession goes longer than as many people are predicting, to only have basically another $150 million in year 2 to address budget shortfalls may be a mistake. And so if we can get by without touching it this year, that's certainly my preference. But there's no doubt there's clouds in the sky, and they're dark, and rain may fall. But if we can avoid touching that, I hope we do.
Yeah. Will you be making any legislative changes that might change future revenue?
There are always discussions about things that impact our revenue, and certainly, as Mary, you and I have talked about it, they can impact cities and local communities. Senator Gum has proposed elimination of the state portion of the grocery sales tax. As you know, many municipalities rely on that heavily and are concerned about this, even the state portion disappearing, whether it'll constitutionally, whether they can continue. Everything we look at, whether it's tax cuts, provider fees for hospitals, or all the things that we hear being talked about, they impact the revenues in some form or fashion, and we do require a fiscal accounting of that, so that we know that we have a balanced budget at the end of the day.
We normally spend this time talking about things that would reduce revenue, like tax cuts and the other.
Right.
Do we have anything likely to be on the table this session that would in any way, I don't care whether you call it a tax or a fee or whatever you may call it, would increase revenue?
There are some limited proposals that I've heard. I don't know if ultimately these bills will be heard. The most prominent one is the discussion about a provider fee on hospitals that's been discussed by the Hospital Association.
And how would that work?
Well, that's the real question, is what are the details? If that fee were assessed, does it create a shortfall or a benefit to the hospitals? Does it bring in federal matching dollars? All those questions are on the table, and there's a lot of questions that need to be answered there.
Well, do you anticipate the tax cuts being done by the end of the day?
I think it's very difficult. If you're talking about changing tax policy, it's most likely on a forward-moving agenda, in future years. But it's not very likely there'd be an actual decrease this year.
Let me jump in and get us to our break. We're visiting with Senate President Pro Temp Glenn Coffey. We'll be right back on The Verdict.
I am Shay Buchanan, Special Olympics Athlete of the Year, and I am Chickasaw. I have scoliosis and problem with my joints and my arms.
It just amazes me every day to see her here whenever the doctor said, that there's a good chance that she may not be with you for very long.
The competition, it's real good. I throw my softballs far, and I get a ribbon. In the next Special Olympics, I want to run faster, throw the softball farther, and I will win.
And I thank God every day that I am blessed with her, because she's my little angel.
I'd like to thank the Chickasaws and my friends and family for being there and loving me just the way I am.
Home values are down in some states, but not in Oklahoma. Oklahoma's home values have increased 4.2% during the past 12 months. Unlike some states where home values have decreased as much as 20%. Good thing you're in Oklahoma. There may be real estate problems in some states, but there has never been a better time than now to buy or sell a home in Oklahoma. One of the most affordable states in the country, Oklahomans are buying and selling homes every day, and an Oklahoma Realtor can show you how. Good thing you're in Oklahoma.
Okiwani is an Indian name for a place where children play. When we obtained the camp, we found a lot of oil debris left in the woods. We saw a commercial about how the oil and natural gas industry cleans up old oil well sites. We called the OERB, and they agreed to remove tons of concrete and steel. It didn't cost us a thing. Thousands of children have left their footprints on this land. Thanks to the oil and gas industry, they will for a long time to come.
And welcome back to The Verdict. Mick Cornett and Kent Myers. We're visiting with State Senator Glenn Coffey. Kent, where to now?
Let's talk a little bit about proposed lawsuit reform or tort reform or whatever phrase
Okay.
we choose to use. It's something that comes up annually.
It does.
Sometimes makes it farther in the process than others, but at least last couple of years hasn't been forthcoming. What do you anticipate being the two or three major principles of any lawsuit reform bill that you'd like to see come out?
That's a great question. I think joint and several liability is part of that discussion as far as changing. We do have joint and several liability in Oklahoma, and maybe going more to a change where the party that's ultimately responsible is the damages are awarded against them. Is one important leg of that. I think class action reform is a tricky one because under our Constitution you cannot have special legislation. Right. Quite frankly, I think that you could have some modest class action reform if it weren't for the issue of royalty owner and oil and gas issues that make it more combative and certainly a lot more concerns. There are a number of issues that I don't know how much disagreement there is, whether it has to do with junk science or maybe adopting the federal rule for summary judgment, that I think make the process a little clearer and more transparent at the state level, much like you do in federal court.
But a lot of people have been looking, well, when the Republicans get control of the House and the Senate, then maybe tort reform is coming next. Now's the time? Is that the bottom line, or is there still more discussion to be had?
Well, here I think the roadmap is fairly simple. The governor has stated his position clearly. One additional principle that I didn't mention is caps on non-economic damages, which is the governor's principal opposition to any lawsuit reform measure or tort reform measure. And I don't foresee that changing. And so what we have said is, quite frankly, I don't think that the plaintiff's bar has negotiated because they haven't had to, number one, and number two, they don't want to, and they don't see a reason or any benefit for coming to the table. And so absent some motivation to do that, I don't see the opportunity for reform. And so there is going to be a measure that's going to make its way through the House and the Senate that says go to a vote of the people. It'd be a referendum process that says on contingency fee cases, they'd be capped, like 13 other states have done, at 25%. Now, clearly, especially the plaintiffs' bar, they see this as an attack on their business and regulating their business. And the argument for doing it is simple. We think that there could be some modest reform rather than just saying no, just having no conversation at all and keep killing the bill. Let's come to the table and get some reform that the plaintiffs' bar, the governor, and everybody can agree on, and let's move forward on this. I've carried this bill for 10 straight years. I'm tired of talking about it. I think everybody would like to move on to other conversations.
You've debated it on this show
I have.
2 or 3
That's
times.
right. That's right.
Well, quite well, I might add.
So are we headed to a statewide vote?
Well, I don't know. I hope not. I hope that the willingness of the legislature to send that to a vote of the people, and I think the willingness is there. It did not make it out of the House last year, but I think the resolve will be there this time to force that discussion. It'll come over from the House, and then we'll have a conversation. Can we get a compromise on tort reform or not? Because the reality of it is there's growing there's a growing concern among businesses to get things done. Texas, I was speaking with some legislators from Texas just the other day who were talking about what a difference it's made. You have a backlog of physicians and making application to practice in Texas, where before you had a huge absence of physicians. They couldn't recruit them there. We have that problem here in Oklahoma today. And so if we can come to terms with the issues that matter and can lower health insurance costs, make Oklahoma a more business-friendly state, and still afford the legal community a way to make a living and protect people's access to the courthouse, I think we can get something done.
And I guess if you did it in the way that you just described, with both houses of the legislature sending it to a vote of the people, there is no gubernatorial veto of that.
That's right. If the governor's not willing to come to the table on that, and quite frankly, I'm not throwing stones at him. He's taking his shots. If the side that is opposed to lawsuit reform doesn't come to the table, there's really no upside for him to engage. He's stated his position.
Mm-hmm. What about the Senate as a whole, with Republicans slowly moving first into the tie position and then now into the leadership position? How have you tried to generate interest from your senators as far as the committees and things like that? What sort of process have you had to engage your senators on your side of the aisle to get into those key positions?
Well, as people have become elected and that they've grown into the role of senior members of the caucus, everyone has areas of expertise, everyone has areas of interest, and they've gravitated toward those. And what I've tried to do as best I could is match those talents and those abilities with the specific committees of people that are willing to make a difference in those areas.
And describe for the general public what a committee chair does and why that's an influential position.
It's an important position because a committee chair sets the agenda. They read the bills that have been assigned to their committee. They decide which ones they're going to hear. They decide what order they're going to be heard in. And obviously that controls the debate.
And there's no appeal from that.
There is no appeal from that. That's right.
Well, let's talk about term limits a little bit. Some of the progress that's been possible for the Republicans in the Senate has been due in part to term limiting certain popular senators out of office. Most of them have been Democrats. I presume in the upcoming elections it'll start hitting on the Republican side as well. How do you see that affecting your majority?
Well, I think that's an excellent point. There's no question we couldn't have made the gains without term limits. It is a part that created some opportunities. But at the same time, we've defeated some incumbents. And so far, during this last cycle, I would say this last election cycle was our first real test. We withstood that in a grand fashion. Incumbents in Lawton and Northwest, an incumbent seat up in Northwest Oklahoma turned out to be a very strong showing by a new member. So we're defending those seats well, and I think it ultimately does come down to ideas. We have some ideas that are winning in Oklahoma, and we're finding good candidates who match up with those ideas and what Oklahomans want to see. And ultimately, that's the real test. If you have a good candidate, that's 80. You're 80% there.
Well, doing the math, when you look ahead to the election in 10 and 12, which party has how many senators that are currently in office that would term limit out?
You know, I don't have all those numbers on available to me on the top of my head, but we're going to be playing more defense this next cycle. We had a class of 5 that came in that all will be defending those seats. At any given time, 24 of the 48 members every election cycle are up. There are a number of safe seats. Senator Johnson, myself, are both term limiting, and they'll probably, in all likelihood, will stay Republican. Senator Crutchfield and Ardmore, that's an open seat that'll be a tough one for Republicans to win, but it's achievable. There's some Western Oklahoma seats that Democrats are going to have to defend, Tom Ivester and Randy Bass.
So it'll be an interesting campaign season in 10.
I think the battlefield is open and the opportunity for growth on both sides is there.
Let's just take about the last 45 seconds we've got and talk about your relationship with the Speaker of the House, Chris Benge. How is it working with him?
Chris is a great guy. I mean, he's one of those personalities that it's impossible not to like him. And he's a very thoughtful, deliberate person, did a great job as Appropriations Chair, and we're going to have a great working relationship and work well together.
All right. Senator Glenn Coffey, our guest today on The Verdict. Thanks for coming in, Senator.
Thanks so much for having me.
Senator. Good luck to you.
Good luck in this legislative session. Kent and I will have a final word right after this. You're watching The Verdict.
All children deserve a life of hope and love, but sometimes they experience a life of pain, neglect, and abuse.
When that happens, each child deserves all the quality assistance and representation that can be offered in our legal system. For more information, call 23-CHILD.
Oklahoma Lawyers for Children, helping to bring hope and love back to the lives of abused children.
The good life comes naturally to Tulsa, where nature's beauty is matched with an eye for aesthetics. A legacy of neighborhoods graced with lawns and landscaping and handsome homes. A place that seems to have patented an ideal lifestyle. Bank First is loyal to the quality of life Tulsa assures its citizens, to the priority placed on education, culture, and growth. Loyal to builders who transform raw land into residential charm. Developers who see opportunity and add vitality to Tulsa's economy. Bank First serves both enterprise and private lives that need a loyal partner. It's how we help nurture this city's very good life. Bank First. Loyal to Oklahoma. Loyal to you.
The Journal-Record is pleased to be a sponsor of The Verdict. The Journal-Record, since 1903, the best source of Oklahoma business news and legal information.
Welcome back to The Verdict. We are wrapping up a show in which we visited with the President Pro Temp, Glenn Coffey. What an interesting guy, and it just seems like you've kind of seen him grow in this position now here in nearly his last term.
Indeed, we've been on the air going on 8 years, well over 7 years, and he's been on every year, I think, that we've been on the air. Always generous with his time. His leadership skills are just unsurpassed by anybody out there at the legislature. He's well thought of. I think he will lead the Senate through a very productive time. I'm sure it will be difficult with the budget restraints as they are, but our Oklahoma Senate is in good hands.
It'll be interesting to see at the end of the day, when budgets have to be cut, just how much of that rainy day fund is tapped into. I can't imagine they won't touch it at all. I know he said that that's their first choice, because they fear next year may be worse, and they're constitutionally limited to tapping in only 50% of that. But you just have to wonder that the political pressures they're going to receive are going to be very large.
It's hard to imagine what area of state government that could withstand its pro rata share of 4.4 reduction that wouldn't justify some kind of supplement from the fund. That's right.
We'll see. Well, web address for the state Senate is oksenate.gov. You can visit with Glenn on that site. And you can go to our website and tell us about a show you'd like to see right here on The Verdict. We'll see you next week.
The preceding program was produced exclusively for the Cox Channel.